Hello, my name is Linda Katherine Smith-Jones. I am the author of Phonetic Reading with Silent Elephant E. It is a reading program for all learners of any age, preschoolers through adults, particularly dyslexic learners or anyone struggling to learn to read, but truly it is for anyone with or without a learning difference. Today, I'm going to start answering your questions by telling you a story. Who doesn't love stories? About 6.5 years ago, I welcomed a sweet 9-year-old girl and her mom into my home to begin tutoring. It was the first time that I was meeting them. However, I had talked with Mom a few times on the phone. Mom had shared with me how concerned she was about Beth's lack, and that's not her real name, but Beth's lack of progress in learning to read. When I first meet new students and their parents, the first thing we do is what I call a get to know you session. I want time for everyone to relax, to learn new things about each other, such as your favorite color, favorite snack food, favorite healthy food, what hobbies you have. Do the children participate in sports? I ask the parents, think back to what was your favorite subject in school or your least favorite subject in school, and then I ask the children. I also introduce them to my service dog, and my service dog does such a wonderful job of breaking the ice, getting everyone to giggle and relax. So when I was first meeting Beth this day, after she was enjoying meeting my dog, I began to feel that the sweet little girl was relaxing. And so I asked her if we could do some listening activities together. She shyly said yes. I always begin my assessments with children with phonemic awareness. And I'll background a little bit. Phonemic awareness is being aware of the phonemes, which are the smallest unit of sound in our language, understanding that one phoneme after another flows together in our spoken words. Children need to be able to hear the phonemes in a word and understand that these phonemes are like linked together one after another to make a word with meaning. They also need to understand that there's a little tiny break of silence between words. That was very difficult for my daughter. Another reason I begin with the phonemic awareness assessment is a child does not have to know letter names, letter shapes, or letter sounds in order to do phonemic awareness. They just need to listen to sounds. So I began assessing Beth with the easiest assessment. My 2 phonemic awareness assessments in my program are in parts 1 and in part 2 of my program. There's 2 assessments. One is easier and one is more difficult. We completed the whole first assessment, even though I could tell right away that Beth was struggling. She was very hesitant in her answers. She was very unsure of her answers, but she did achieve a score of 90%. You may say, that's wonderful. It is wonderful. However, to progress to the more difficult assessment, she would have needed to achieve a score of 95% with quick, confident answers. I continually praised her during this assessment and told her how wonderful she was doing because, of course, she was doing beautifully. We always need to celebrate with our children, celebrate their correct answers, but also celebrate their brave attempts, even when they're not sure of what they're doing. So to continue, I used my assessments that are in part 2. So there's 14 parts in my program. They're all spiral bound. And part 1 has phonemic awareness. Part 2 has all the assessments plus my research. And so the rest of the assessments are in part 2. So I continued with those. And now I began assessing her knowledge of uppercase and lowercase letter names and letter sounds. I made careful notes of which letter names and sounds she was struggling with so that I would know, which ones we needed to work on in our upcoming tutoring sessions. Next, I gave her a rhyming assessment. We had such fun with that. At first, we were just doing real words, but then we started making up silly words, and pretty soon we were giggling, and I could tell that Beth was relaxing again. And so then I asked her if we could do some reading of letters and words. Again, Beth's kind of took a deep breath and went, yes. So we began the San Diego Quick Assessment. This is a quick assessment. It's just reading words in a list. There's no context. I like using this assessment because it is quick and because it gives me a good idea of where to start the more difficult oral reading inventory, which we do after the San Diego Quick Assessment. The San Diego Quick Assessment is quite old, just as I am, but I think it's wonderful. So we started at the reading readiness level, which is a kindergarten level. Beth achieved a score of being instructional at a first grade reading level in word recognition. Now, I must tell you that Beth at this time was 10 years old and was in the 5th grade. And so you can see that she was 4 years, about 4.5 years really, behind in school. Since Beth could read words, though, I gained that knowledge from the San Diego Quick Assessment. Then I could begin giving her an oral reading inventory, which is also in my part 2. And we began at a pre-primer level, and she was able to advance to a primer reading level as far as instructional reading level, as far as word recognition and comprehension. That's where she needed to be instructed. And that is about November, December of 1st grade. And again, she was in 5th grade. Beth, I said, do you like to spell words and write stories? I love to draw pictures, and she truly does. In fact, when we were doing worksheets, almost every word she had to draw a picture of it at first. And I love to tell my mom stories, and then she writes them on paper for me. That sounds like a lot of fun, I said. I'm excited to see your drawings and your stories. Could you bring them with your mom next time when you come? I'd love to see them. Okay, she said, you will like them. I'm sure I will, I said. I was wondering right now, I would like to have you write some words for me on this piece of paper. Beth's body language, she stiffened, her head went down, her face became sad. I said, let's try 3 words. Okay, she sadly said. We truly did just 3 words. Beth was so uncomfortable. She spelled only the word the correctly. I want to mention that one thing with homeschooling, with tutoring, you can move at a child's pace, and you can sense from their body language or their facial expressions when to stop, when to move ahead. So we did just 3 words. And also I wanted to mention that spelling is extremely difficult for almost all dyslexic people. So we had finished my assessments. I had gained a lot of knowledge about Beth's abilities. I knew right where to start teaching her with phonetic reading with silent elephant E. I would begin with part 1, Phonemic Awareness, and part 3, short vowels. I told her, I said, Beth, you are awesome. I so appreciate your hard work and your positive attitude, trying your very best to do even those tricky tasks that I asked you to do. You did a wonderful job. Would you like to play a game now? Oh, yes, she excitedly exclaimed. So I began pulling out the game boards for Phonemic Awareness, the colored rubber bands, the colored squares, and the individual stand-up mirrors. And we started lesson 1 in Phonemic Awareness, part 1. We were having lots of fun learning to play the first game together. As we concluded the game, Beth's mom said, Beth, you can play with Mrs. Jones's dog for a few minutes. I want to talk to Mrs. Jones in the kitchen. Oh, okay, I surprisedly said. I got up to follow her into my kitchen. And Marilyn is her mom's name. Marilyn was ahead of me. Beth just jumped down onto the floor and was so happy playing with Kona. When Marilyn and I were in the kitchen, Marilyn put her hands on her hips. And towering over me, she's nearly 6 feet tall, maybe she is, she slowly was backing me into a corner, saying, what do you think that you can do differently that I haven't done already to teach my daughter to read? I started to open my mouth, but Marilyn continued. Beth has been in preschool, in public school, with Sylvan Learning Center, with other tutors, and recently I've begun homeschooling her part-time while she attends a public school, an alternative learning program. What makes you think that you can teach her to read. Well, I took a deep breath and stood straight and tall as I looked high up into her eyes. And I said, let me tell you a bit about my background and my reading program. So I didn't tell her quite as much as I'm going to tell you right now, but I don't want to leave anything out for you. But I was quite nervous as she's staring down at me. But I do want to share with you basically what I told her. So I want to share my background first. I was a classroom teacher for 36 years in the public school system. I have taught many, many children that have struggled to learn to read for many different reasons. I never ever thought of leaving a child behind, never. I gave my struggling students extra help during class, extra help during recess. I even volunteered to stay after school to work with children with parent permission. I also took continuing education classes, and I read a lot of research, always searching for answers for the best ways to help my students. After 12 years of teaching, when my daughter was almost 3 years old, I discovered that she is dyslexic, as is my husband. The day I discovered that my daughter was dyslexic, it was heart-wrenching. I knew that she had a long, difficult road ahead of her learning to read, write, and spell. I now knew that I didn't just have to be an excellent teacher for my students. I also had to be an excellent student for my daughter. My passion for learning everything I could about teaching people with learning differences was heightened. So, Marilyn, I delved into my research as never before. I attended even more workshops and more classes and read more research on the teachings of reading, writing, and spelling, such as research from Louisa Cook Moats, the International Dyslexic Association, Orton Gillingham, Slingerland, Linda Mood Bell, Linda Silverman, and Sally Shaywitz, to name a few. I still do research today. I also began asking my husband, who's dyslexic, what helped him to learn to read? What helps him now with reading and writing? I asked my daughter, I asked my students questions such as, what did I do in this lesson that helped you to learn? What did I do that confused you or made it difficult for you to learn? What could I do to help you in the future? What parts of the lesson do you think that you will remember next week or even a long time from now? Why do you think that? I took careful notes of all of their answers. So, Marilyn, using my research and my learned knowledge, I began to write my own reading program, Phonetic Reading with Silent Elephant E. I was focused on how the brain works best, how children, anyone, learns the best. I wrote the book, I edited it, I re-edited it with my editor, Nina Hansen, for 4 years before we went to print. We are still editing. So I want you to know, Marilyn, that Phonemic Awareness, reading with Silent Elephant E, approaches teaching reading, writing, and spelling as one subject, the understanding and using of words in print. For the brain, it just makes sense that reading, writing, and spelling fit together like a puzzle because they're all words in print. And when they're taught together, so that when you teach the words and you have the spelling and the writing of those words all together with one phonics rule, and then you move to the next, it just makes so much sense, and the brain just can relax and understand written language. All concepts that I will teach Beth are sequentially presented. We will start from the basic foundation, from the simplest concepts, and move to the most complex, always reviewing, always reinforcing what I've previously taught. Each vague, because they are vague, phonemic awareness and phonics rules, they are vague. Each one of those vague concepts will move to total understanding because I will introduce them to her creative part of her brain. As she told me, she loves to draw. And each lesson will also engage the analytical part of her brain, thus stimulating both hemispheres of her brain. Every phonics concept that I will teach will activate both hemispheres of her brain. This is extremely important. The creative parts of her brain understand and store knowledge through our senses. So each lesson that I teach will begin with curiosity. I'm gonna stir up her curiosity before I even start. Then we're going to have fun. We're going to have coloring, art, dance, song, puppetry, music, food, writing, all kinds of interactive activities. The analytical part of her brain understands and stores the whys of learning our language. Like, why is English so confusing? Because it comes from so many different languages. And the rules of phonics. 96% of the words actually follow the rules. Only 4% are those confusing ones that don't follow the rules. So the analytical brain will learn all of this and come to understand it clearly. When learning this way, the analytical part of the brain is never confused. It connects the whys and the rules with the creativity part of the brain, and it logically fits all the pieces together and stores them tightly in their brain so they can easily be retrieved later. I tell the children they have a little bunny rabbit in their brain, and the little bunny rabbit is making a pathway, like a burrow, to find that information. So my fun whole body introductory activities are then integrated into the rest of the lesson. So after we do the introduction, we'll have the rest of the lesson. The rest of the lesson will involve colored pencils, colored markers. It will involve drawing. It will involve marking what I call silent elephant E, diacritical markings, somewhat like in the dictionary, and also verbalization, talking to me, telling me how you're learning, what you're thinking about. The use of color for the phonemic awareness and phonics rules will continue to activate all parts of the brain as it solidifies her learning. I know of no other reading program that uses color like Silent Elephant E. I don't know of any program that uses color at all. Further, to solidify the concepts that they're learning even more deeply into both hemispheres, I will have Beth verbally explain to me things such as how she marks words with colors and symbols. How do you do it? Why did you choose a particular color or symbol? Why did you put a straight line over that vowel? Why did you put an orange wiggly line under that digraph? I will have her explain how she knows that what she did is correct. How do you know that you just did that right? Also, I will ask her how and why and what she changed. If there was an error and she needed to fix something, why did you change it? How did you change it? And I will ask her, we will discuss meanings of words and meanings of sentences. And I will also ask her how what she is doing is connecting to prior learning and knowledge. What did we just do that connected with what we did last week? Verbalizing her knowledge, speaking her knowledge, she's going to have to use certain parts of her brain to do that. Awesome. That process of learning allows her brain to completely integrate the concepts that I will teach her. Store the knowledge, put it in that burrow, and then quickly and easily retrieve the information when she needs it. Just send that little bunny rabbit down to get that carrot. There is no jumble of facts in her brain, only clear, solid pathways in the brain, making the retrieval simple. Finally, she will be able to verbally teach the skills to you because at the end of each lesson, Beth will be taking home a paper and she will be the teacher and she will be teaching you or dad what she just learned. And hopefully in the future, she will be excited to teach her teacher in her classroom and her classmates the phonics rules. So I finally took a deep breath and said, Marilyn, I know I can teach Beth. Not I think, not maybe, not I hope. I know I can teach Beth to read, write, and spell. So I hope that you will entrust me with that, just with being able to do that with your daughter. I hope that you will let me do just that. Marilyn looked at me, pointed her finger at me again, and emphatically said, I'll give you 3 months to prove it to me. She turned on her heel, walked into my office and said, come on, Beth, we'll be coming back on Thursday. I told them how happy I was to have met them and how excited I was to be able to tutor Beth. and I was looking forward to seeing them on Thursday. After they left, you can imagine that I took several deep breaths. Oh my gosh. So now you might wonder, was Marilyn actually happy in 3 months? Well, Beth was at a 3rd grade reading level in 3 months. 8 months from the time we started, so 5 months after the 3 months, Beth was at a 7th grade reading level, above her chronological grade level. As I told you, she was in 5th grade. Now she was reading at a 7th grade level. Beth is now in 10th grade and about to graduate from high school. In 10th grade, about to graduate from high school to attend, it's called the Running Start College program in the state of Washington. Oh yes, I forgot to mention, she is profoundly dyslexic. I am so proud of her. She is just an awesome person. And she is so confident in herself nowadays. It's just wonderful. So, in summary, what makes Silent Elephant E different from other reading programs? All of that I just told you. Silent Elephant E is designed to support the brain to learn, to store information, and to retrieve that information, that knowledge, in a very quick, fast way, in the way it does the best, simple to complex, sequentially. And Silent Elephant E does this through fun activities that activate every part of the brain, every part of the body, using all of the senses. No other program that I know of, and I have done a lot of research, and I have been on a lot of curriculum committees for choosing curriculum for school districts. No other program that I know of does this so simply and thoroughly that learners, the children, easily teach others what they know. So as I mentioned, I was hoping that Beth at some point would want to go to her class and teach her classmates. And she did. Her teacher called me one day and said they were having a play tryout, and the teacher had posted all the play parts and a little description of each character. And some of the children were having difficulty reading, and Beth just stepped right over and said, "Let me read this to you," and read to all the children. They just gathered around her and she was reading it to them. Also, as Jennifer told you, Rachel, who's only in 1st grade but reading at a 5th grade level now, is the teacher helper and goes from student to student and explains the phonics rules correctly, and so they can understand them, because she remembers everything and in such a fun way. And one of my boys that I've tutored, Thomas, he is now in 10th or 11th, and he has taught his classroom many times. He tells me, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, I had to teach my teacher about the C and G game. Oh, I taught my class about the 6 sounds of OU the other day. Oh, Mrs. Jones," and he just goes on and on. He just loves it. I said, "Someday I wonder if you're going to grow up to be a teacher." And he goes, "No," but he's doing a great job right now. So no other program that I know teaches all children, the profoundly dyslexic, those with learning differences, children with Down syndrome, any learning difference you can name, dyspraxia, anything. And even those with no learning differences just soar through the program. And they are just so successful, and they're so filled with joy. No other program has supported children leaving special education because they are now successful. I have many students that come to me for tutoring that are in special education. Almost all of them, because some of them have very, very profound learning differences, but almost all of them have been staffed out of special education. I must tell you that in my 36 years of teaching in the classroom, I never had a student staffed out of special education. But with Silent Elephant E, it's happening all the time. So no other program I know of integrates the knowledge of reading, writing, and spelling so completely that years later, their brain will retrieve that knowledge that they learned when they were using Silent Elephant E. I must tell you a story about this. This past Christmas, I went out to lunch with one of my former students. Jane, not her real name, began tutoring with me when she was 15 years old. She was then reading at a 5th grade reading level, although she was in 9th grade. At that time, I quickly learned through my assessments that she did not know all of the sounds of the vowels. So I taught her a version of Old MacDonald to learn the vowel sounds. It goes like this. Old MacDonald had a farm, ah, ah, eh, ah, And on this farm he had a cat. Ah, ah, eh, with a here and a there, here a there a everywhere old MacDonald had a farm. And it continues with the four other short vowels with four other animals. Well, Jane sat next to me, looking at me like, are you serious? I am 15 years old. I am not going to sing Old MacDonald. But I looked at her and I said, so when you come to tutoring, each time you come, we are going to sing Old MacDonald until you learn all of those 5 vowel sounds. You'll learn them quickly, especially through music. It really helps. She looked at me and said, if I have to do this, I will know all of the short vowel sounds by the next time I see you. I will sing it once. And I said, well, if you can sing it once very quickly and you know all the sounds, that's wonderful. Also, I am going to have you on the caterpillar and the train game. Tell me the vowel sounds forward, backwards, and mixed up. And if you can do that, then you don't have to sing the song again. Well, she did just that. The next tutoring session, she knew it. I was so surprised. Within 13 months of instruction of Silent Elephant E, Jane was now at a college reading level, although now she was in 11th grade, but she was at a college reading level. So now, this now 19-year-old sophomore in college studying neurology said to me over lunch this past Christmas, do you remember when I didn't want to sing Old MacDonald? Oh yes, I smiled. Well, the other day, she said, I was trying to sound out a new word in chemistry, and I caught myself singing the song to remember the sound of short E. Can you believe it? We giggled, but I thought, yes, I can believe it. Her brain has clear pathways, those little burrows, a way to figure out the word. Oh yes, I must tell you, Jane is also profoundly dyslexic and doing wonderfully in college courses now. She has been accepted, she just told me a couple weeks ago, she has been accepted to be a teacher assistant this summer at her university. She is so excited. Phonetic Reading with Silent Elephant E teaches children and adults of all ages. The youngest student I have right now is 3.5. All the way up to 17. Presently, I have 7 students that are teenagers right now. All but one needed to learn phonemic awareness. So that's where we start with phonemic awareness. I am also helping them close their gaps in their phonics skills because many of them, they're teenagers, they're in middle school, high school, junior high, but they've got these gaps, these missing holes, and so the whole thing of phonics doesn't quite make sense. So I'm helping them close those gaps, and they are progressing quickly, gaining confidence every day. In fact, just yesterday, I received a text from one of my students' moms. She's a 10th grader, and the text said that this young lady is going to receive a Student of the Quarter award in her accelerated language arts program. Not a regular language arts program, but an accelerated one. I must tell you that just 1 year and 3/4 ago, this 10th grader was at a 3rd grade reading level. Her mom wanted to know in the text if I would like to come to the presentation. Of course, I said yes. I am so excited. I am so proud of her. My buttons are popping. Again, I am very proud of the fact that Phonetic Reading with Silent Elephant E has helped multiple children leave special education, such as Jennifer's daughter, Rebecca, that she told you about, because I have taught these children the way their brain learns, the best way that their brain learns, the way they love to learn. Thank you for joining me today. If you have other questions, I would love to answer them. You can email me at silentelefante@gmail.com. Also, please visit my website, silentelefante.com. In conclusion, I want to say, I know of no other program that is so much fun. I love Silent Elephant E. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.